Whatever you do, don't throw it into a can of beans. That doesn't work.
I think it's rice.
Rice, Steve.
No,
rice.
Tom Brady threw his phone into a can of beans.
Shut up.
Yeah, that'll destroy the text messages. That's not how text messages work. It was a whole thing.
That's like drinking hot sauce after.
Speaking of keys.
No, that's smart. That's smart. Beans dumb, hot sauce smart. Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches, where we cover 5 of the most interesting data breaches from this last week and one of our favorite bourbons. I'm Steve.
Michael.
Divya.
Frank.
Jerry.
Yep.
Paul.
Howdy, I'm Sue.
Great. Good job, team.
Flawless.
Divya, what happened this week?
Okay, guys. Story number 1, starting it off with Kaspersky, and these guys are denying rumors of a source code. There was a tweet that said that Kaspersky had only 12 hours from their production quality assurance and staging servers is leaked. What do you guys have to say about this?
So to add to this story, this was also the week that Kaspersky was banned from, who was it? Belgium, Norway,
Denmark.
Denmark.
Okay.
Yeah, that was close.
The headline I read in the United States was Denmark bans Kaspersky without proof.
Who respects
Mhm.
traditional
Yeah,
boundaries.
right. That'll show them. I'm gonna withhold my deeper comments until the source code is actually leaked and we get a chance to analyze it, because I have a feeling that will say everything that I want to say.
So this is suspicious, and we don't know if this is real. There's been rumors of backdoors being found in the code. Obviously, Kaspersky was banned by the US government because of evidence or suspected evidence of collusion with the KGB. So it's a very concerning time if Kaspersky is your antivirus provider. You know, even if this wasn't a Russian antivirus, having any antivirus have its source code leaked is just going to give hackers ways to circumvent it. Allegedly.
Allegedly. I would
One
say
thing that, sorry, go ahead, shoot.
no, go ahead, Miguel. Yeah, my friend, go ahead.
One thing that it seems kind of odd, at least to me, is the fact that the article mentions that all 3 environments got leaked. I mean, meaning production, staging, and quality assurance. That is extremely weird. I mean, either they actually got one code, which is the same for all 3 environments, or I don't know, they've been sloppy enough to actually get hacked on all 3 environments.
I think that there's the real events, which is Kaspersky being a Russian antivirus, is certainly facing a lot of scrutiny these days. There's also the real events of them being banned by the US government due to expected collusion with the KGB. So it is interesting that they're in the news more and more. And I don't think that's going to stop. I think Kaspersky's been a weird company, right? Because like a lot of hackers are Russian, and here's this like company that's like, we're going to protect you from the hackers wherever they may be. And it's kind of, it feels weird.
Yeah, it's kind of like if Hershey sponsored the American Dentist Association or something. It's not necessarily an association that you would want to see together.
Right.
Yeah.
And since their business in the United States is probably as good as over, it's the least of their problems.
It's Soviet Russia, backdoor comes to you.
That's right.
You know, that thing you were
From
saying.
Russia with love. From Russia with love, right?
Have they announced any large companies in the US that were using them?
$50 every month, so that's kind of.
Oh, I
like
think a
what-
lot do.
Yeah, I'm not, well, yeah, I'm not, like, at this point, if you're using Kaspersky, like, come on.
Louder to
I
Are you
posted
kidding
this,
me?
and this is my personal belief that if you're using a Russian or Chinese product, you have to assume that the government has some sort of access to either the product or the operations of the company.
Definitely.
You just have to assume that at this point and do your due diligence.
Right. Well, it's like the Brooklyn Bridge. The people who believe that Kaspersky wouldn't let your corporate data go out the back door believe that Putin would never attack, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, companies don't get that big in that country without some sort of cooperation with
Exactly.
authoritarian government.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
But to Paul's point, not saying that they have it, just saying that they could have it
Yeah.
at any time.
Divya
I've got a
brought
bridge to sell you. Yeah.
Divya brought a good point. Buying Kaspersky it feels very similar to like if someone walks up and is like, hey, for $50 a month, I'll protect you from hackers. And it'd be a shame if hackers found out that you didn't have protection, right? It feels like you're giving money to Russia either way. So it's always been weird. And I know that they were like the greatest antivirus for a little while, and everyone was like, well, they're all hackers. They know what viruses are. But the geopolitical landscape's changed a little bit.
It's like, how did they get such a comprehensive list of all the malware signatures in 2004? I have no idea, right? It's like if you went door to door trying to do the phone book and somebody just forced everybody at gunpoint to give all their names and addresses, they would put together a much better phone book.
Yeah, it brings us back to the thought that ransomware will, within this year or soon, offer a protection scheme. Like you subscribe to Conti for $50 a month to make sure you don't being hacked by Conti.
Right. It's like the Chinese traditional medicine. You keep paying us if we keep you well, and you don't pay us if you get sick.
We may.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Oh no, that's fine. You think they show this shit in China? No. Yeah. So sorry to our one Chinese viewer. Like,
Hey, wait, that's me.
You're our worst Chinese participant.
Hear you. That hurts.
Oh no.
So
Guys, so for story number 2, this is quite interesting and
this is the reason we're banned.
true. Chinese spies hacked a livestock app to breach US state networks. So the animal tracking software USAHERDS and Log4j.
You heard?
I heard it through the IoT grapevine.
Anyway, and Log4j gave the notorious APT41 group a foothold in multiple government systems. What do you guys have to say about this story? Look at this.
all right, so Log4j was a while ago. So like that should be fixed. If it's not fixed, please go fix that. Anyone who's not fixed Log4j. And then I just think it's kind of cute that like there's an app for like herd management, like herder or only herds. It's good. It's great. I love it.
I heard.
Yeah. You're just swiping.
I heard it on the grapevine.
I'm actually looking to buy a cow
like
here
another
pretty soon.
Yeah, another thing is like this app ended up being a great system to deploy like extra attacks. So like you can't trust anything. Can't trust any app, even if it's a cow for cow app.
Yeah, again, we've talked about this a few times. The problem is that American enterprise and apps like that are always built for growth. There's no assumption, like the internal security assumption is that your partner or your customer is trying to breach you. And unless you're designed to protect against that, you're screwed. If you're designed to just ingest their data and build a cool system to track herds, you shouldn't be surprised when their supplier, like their literal open source supplier is breached, which means they're breached, which means you're breached.
Yeah.
Like there's no, I didn't know, you know.
The breaches are built in, actually.
This story, I love this story on multiple fronts because it touches on so many things that we talked about: Chinese hacking groups, Log4j, and application security. The Wired article actually has a very good detailed breakdown of what happened, and it was basically this company that took a lot of precautions in their application security then got a little bit sloppy one time. And what happened was in December, when the Log4j vulnerability was discovered, this group then used Log4j to launch other attacks. So this is never a situation where one vulnerability is one entry. It's one vulnerability leads to exploiting another and another and another.
Do the cows get identity theft protection for a year, or is it only the like herd owners?
Well, I'm actually about to buy a cow, and I'll let you know what.
Do cows have government IDs? Like, is this Buttercup US SSN like 124 1228?
They definitely have tracking numbers, and that's not even a joke.
Right.
And I think in Switzerland they do.
Yeah.
I think all the brands now are QR codes.
Right. Yes. Right in the ear.
But you can't trust those QR codes
Exactly.
because they could be phishing QR codes. They could be hackers rebranding your cows.
Are you aware of the dangers of phishing?
Cowing.
Phishing.
Cowing.
I think the point we all fail to make, and it's absolutely paramount, we do make is, Shu, are you buying a cow?
Oh yeah. I'm like probably gonna buy a Jersey cow. And Jersey cows are the cutest cows in the whole world. They're like not that big, and they're like, hey, I'm a Jersey cow.
It's done with big butter.
Yeah.
Right.
I see.
I'm done with big butter.
Wow, I totally cannot believe this is butter.
That's great. I might buy half a cow, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Frank, do
But,
you have any cows
but
walking
it
on the
won't be
sidewalk?
alive, Steve, but it won't be alive.
Frank, do you have any
Cows,
cows
those
walking along the
cows.
sidewalk?
Cows are so good.
Not right now, but I'm thinking that's why we do organize barbecues, just to, it's
Oh,
a tradition. A
Where do you
tradition-
think the meat comes from? I mean, the street.
Comes, yeah.
It's a tradition to stop, avoid ransomware and hackers.
Right.
It's time for a bourbon break.
Okay, guys, for this week, we have the Garrison Brothers Balmorhea bourbon.
I think it's pronounced Balmorhea.
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 That looks strange. But Balmorhea bourbon, this is a Texas bold but smooth, having been aged for 4 years in American white oak barrels, transferred to a second American white oak barrel and aged for 1 year. That was a very confusing statement, but this two-time U.S. Micro Whiskey of the Year and SF Double Gold winner is Bourbon Candy, 94 points, and it's 115 proof? Yeah, 115 proof. And this is their website. And I believe, Steve, you've covered the Garrison Brothers boot flask before. So how do you compare these two?
Yeah, so we have the Balmorhea, which is very different from the boot flask. I would say the boot flask is more of the entry level Garrison Brothers. So Garrison Brothers, if you've not seen it, Texas producer. The boot flask, spoiler alert, was very corny. This is incredibly well aged, as Divya said, it's aged twice. And they tell you exactly, this is a single barrel, so they tell you exactly which bottle number, release year. Actually, it may not be a single barrel, but it's pretty close. So this is a gift from a friend, and I was a little hesitant because I had the cowboy bourbon, which was very corn forward, but I've been enjoying this one. What I would say is they called it candy whiskey. That's not a bad name for it because it is oaky and it smells sweet. It smells kind of syrupy. Like I was afraid it might be like the double oak Woodford Reserve, but no, this is just a delicious whiskey. This is so good. This blew away all of my expectations. it's 115 and it's incredibly smooth. You don't taste the alcohol. It is sweet and mellow, and it's just generally yummy. It's a great whiskey. Like I have nothing negative to say about this. I feel like yummy is the best description of this. I don't know if anyone on this has had the Balmorhea, but you know, I'd always seen it and I always thought it'd be super corny, but it's just so well balanced and so well aged. I highly recommend it. It's super pricey, so have someone else buy it for you. Or like split a bottle with a friend. Like for a sipping whiskey, I can't think of a better sipping whiskey that I've had.
How does it finish?
This is probably the best sipping whiskey I've had. I've had cheaper sipping whiskeys, but this is probably the best. I would say in terms
I
of
talked
flavor,
this morning about having a team meeting in Austin, and we figured it was June. And based on us getting a lot of clients between here and then, and we figured, you know what, June makes sense, but if we come in June, we'll each have a bottle in hand.
right? Yeah, you're gonna have to hurry up if you want the rest of this. It's so yeah, like you know, there's way cheaper sipping whiskeys, but this is probably the best I've had. It's very upfront, like you taste it and it's in your face, but then it just mellows off. I'd say a medium to medium short finish. So highly recommend it. Go, you know, beg, borrow, or steal a bottle for yourself. What's the next story, Divya?
So cheers for that.
No problem.
I know. But okay, story number 3, you guys. So Oklahoma hospital data breach impacts 92,000 people. Security incident at a nonprofit community hospital in Oklahoma may have exposed the personal data of 92,000 individuals. Now, Jerry, I know you mentioned something about like going into Hack Notice and seeing the information related to Oklahoma, and you said there were a lot of like high-level people.
Yeah.
So what do you guys have to say? Right.
Oh, I want to hear from Gary.
Yeah.
No, there were, and I actually sent, I forget where I got it, but it was actually the attorney I sent some information to that's dealing with all the correspondence related to it. I haven't heard back from her yet, but obviously 92,000 names. And what I found out, I mean, I think you read it anyway, but it was when they get healthcare information, it's the worst thing they can get because they get social security numbers, they get credit cards, they get addresses, they get a lot of information. So that's real dangerous information for the wrong people to have.
We've said it before, but healthcare fraud, it's a $3 billion industry and there's zero protections against it. There's no identity theft for healthcare. And if you want to protect yourself from healthcare fraud, good luck. You basically have to request paper records of all of your providers every 6 months and then go through them. So
one thing they said was, you know, you can go in and you can change your cancel your credit cards and cancel, you know, debit cards and all that, but your medical record stays the same. You can't, somebody steals that, you can't change that.
And they're not going to give you a new patient ID. They're not going to give you a new healthcare ID. They're purely going to, I mean, they're going to take whatever happens. Healthcare companies currently consider fraud to be just a write-off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is highly valuable data in a field that has that varies wildly in cybersecurity best practices, basically.
Yeah. We said it last time too. Really, the problem is you have to give all of your data to every single provider you work with, and then they have your data forever, right? You can't say, here's my blood type for 10 minutes. What do you think is wrong with me? You have to give them your blood type forever, along with everything else that you have. And that's really the nature and crux of the problem, because then they have to secure that forever. And that we all know that's not happening.
Well, and who's securing it? It is a hospital that probably has very little budget for IT spend, right? So you have a disconnect. You have a high amount of sensitive data and a low amount of money to secure it, and you're going to end up with stuff like this. Which ransomware group specifically targeted hospitals? Wasn't it Conti?
Oh,
Yeah, so Conti's internal memos were leaked. And for a week during COVID, they targeted like 400 plus hospitals because they're like, oh, hospitals are paying up really well. Let's get them all, right? Like they went after them specifically.
yeah, and one of the dimensions was because they all have pretty good cyber insurance, and so they just it pays out. Bingo.
Hey, isn't this a non-profit hospital? What?
Yeah.
What? Try to explain this to me. I mean, what do they get out of this? How do they profit with this?
I will answer this. In the United States, nonprofit is sort of a BS term because many of these nonprofit entities, especially hospitals, and a lot of the major health insurance companies are technically nonprofit, but they will bring in millions and millions, if not billions, in revenue. So there is a lot of money coming in. So the term nonprofit really doesn't matter because there's so much money coming in.
Well, they'll pay payroll, but they won't accumulate profits and distribute those to stakeholders. Instead of a for-profit company which does distributions to stakeholders, they instead, in theory, lower costs and give the money back if they do end up having excess.
So
And one of the scary implications of the value of healthcare data, of course, is if somehow that data could be linked to the insurance carriers, then they could skew their tables, and because they'll know what conditions you are afflicted with, which is terrifying.
yes,
Well,
that goes back
I
to
mean-
the whole highly valuable information.
I'll say.
The biggest problem is if they change your healthcare information. If someone steals
Oh my God.
your healthcare information, they can go in for a fraudulent procedure and say, hey, actually, you've got my blood type wrong. I'm not A negative, I'm B positive. So make sure you save that, and then you do my procedure, and then you do your procedure, and you die.
Yeah, well,
right?
I
You
mean,
die.
that could be allergies too. So I'm highly allergic to sulfa drugs. Like that would kill me. So
It
if
just kills you. That's
If
terrible.
you went and had a procedure done, it wouldn't even have to be something as obnoxious or obvious as my blood type, though that's free. You could just say, no, I'm not allergic to that.
Right. Yeah. No, that was a typo.
Yeah.
I'm allergic to sunflowers.
I'm gonna write that information down, Mike.
Mike died from sulfur.
Hey, look at that, a
drugs.
basket of muffins.
He's targeting you. He's targeting you already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just as an example, Frank, Kaiser Permanente, one of the biggest insurance companies here, they are technically a nonprofit. They made $8 billion in revenue last year. But they're
Yeah,
still a
they're okay.
nonprofit, so it doesn't really matter.
Goodwill's a nonprofit, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
Of
good.
course, of course.
It's like Kaspersky antivirus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Antivirus.
So the target, it's not actually not the actual target.
Yeah, it's
like
not the actual target, and
It's like a side project. Yeah.
right, yeah. As long as you get somewhere in between that revenue chain, you're good. Doesn't matter.
Well, you guys will remember the string of DDoS type attacks before the prevalence of malware also targeting hospitals. And the idea was, what if we just shut off pacemakers? What if we just kill power to the hospital and people are on life support? What are you going to do then?
Okay, guys, I'm gonna move on to the fourth story now. This one is regarding Adafruit, and I know a couple people on this video cast have been affected, but Adafruit discloses data leak from ex-employee's GitHub repo. And the company suspects that this could have allowed unauthorized access to information about certain users on or before 2019.
Did they get your brewing set up?
I did not buy my Arduino directly, so I'm good. I can't speak for other members.
Oh. Stu, what do you automate?
So basically,
not-
I am basically, I'm pretty much fucked. There's a very high chance I'm on this, and so that's why I said I pressed on this. I think this story is very interesting and very in many aspects. Adafruit has traditionally been a very good company in terms of doing the right thing. They did do the right thing and kind of detailed exactly what happened here. But at first, if you read that article, they did not. They thought that they could get away with not emailing. And I think that was a very bad mistake that they thankfully corrected. They did eventually email exactly what happened to their customers. And essentially what happened, according to the email, was that there's several steps that they made here that could have prevented this. First off, this was a code repo of training set data in GitHub that was private. And literally it is one setting that goes from private to public. And someone changed that to public. And this happens a lot. I've worked in a hospital before where data scientists have a specific set of training data. They think that it's a small training set, doesn't affect many people, but it's still real data. They maybe say it's anonymized data, it's still real data, and they put it on GitHub, and one mistake is what happens here.
Isn't it great that you were in their training set, Shu?
I wouldn't say it's great. I would say that it's not great.
They're building the service for you. They're making sure it always works for you.
Yeah, no. Fuck, my order's out there now. My many orders are out there now. Well, I'm a little sad.
The dirty little secret is that even if you live in a state that requires disclosing these breaches to the affected people, like Shu does, like Washington has laws that say you have to send an email and disclose this to the affected people. Dirty little secret is these laws are not enforced. I've never seen a single case against a business that, other than like Facebook, that has not actually done what they're supposed to. And not reporting or underreporting data breaches is incredibly common. So to this example, they thought they could get away with not reporting. That's the same bet that thousands of companies, if not more, are making each year. And so if you're relying on a company to tell you when you've been exposed, like, good luck.
Good luck.
Here it says, the company has, however, decided not to email every user about the incident. That was crossed out, by the way. And here's an update. After the report's publication, Adafruit has revised its position and now states it will indeed email users. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
This is the next story, you guys. So this is a very juicy story because Samsung confirms a Lapsus ransomware hit where their source code was leaked. And this move comes just a week after GPU maker NVIDIA was hit with Lapsus and every employee credential was leaked.
Yes, Lapsus group is very hot right now.
So hot.
Yeah.
I would say my only comment for this is that it's Samsung's source code that was released. It's their IP that was released. I could not care less if their IP, how much damage their IP has been done with this. The fact that it's source code and that down the road, people can create exploits for Samsung products based on this is the real danger. So like Log4j, definitely expect in the future we're going to see attacks on Samsung platforms based on the information that was released with the source code.
Every time source code is released, it leads to a whole new set of vulnerabilities because you can statistically, statically, and dynamically analyze the source code to find bugs. And you can't do that from the binaries very easily. Think about when the Windows source code was released, right? Like so many vulnerabilities were found and so many exploits. So yeah, if you're using a Samsung device. Well, and I found this interesting that it's both Samsung and NVIDIA, right? Like pick your partners very carefully because what ends up hurting one may hurt the other.
Yep. Yeah, and this is
Well,
hardware source code, so it's not like they can flip a switch and change this immediately. Well, they can to a degree. But this is not going to be the last time we hear about this story.
That sucks.
Yeah, we'll hear about this through various exploits and 0 days that get released.
I was actually thinking about the fact that the source code got leaked. I mean, I know it's been mentioned it was about the hardware, but it crossed my mind the fact that, for example, Samsung makes mobiles and those are based on Android. So it could, maybe I'm speculating too much, but it could maybe potentially lead to some of Android code being exposed as well, which could bring to exploits on that whole platform as well, not just Samsung. But maybe I'm speculating too much.
There's a wise comment here, someone who says if Samsung keys are leaked, it could compromise the trust zone environment on the devices that store specially sensitive data, like biometrics, some passwords, and other details. It's really something to take the dimension of the mess they're in. I mean, if there's any chance they got in deeply, people would rapidly start distrusting the company, and you can picture the rest.
So that's a really important point because whenever you're relying on keys, right, you are completely exposed if the key gets leaked. So there's a whole movement that's called the passwordless movement, and it's all about biometrics and secure keys, right? But what happens when the key gets leaked? It's not secure anymore. And so there's a problem if you're relying on this one thing that's supposed to never be stolen that can get stolen. At least with a password, you can change it. But if you're using an authority, that's very hard to change.
And the same goes with biometric, because your fingerprint are just a password God gave you, and that's it.
And there's a massive increase in attack surface area when you go from computer systems, laptops, desktops, whatever, to handsets. When you go to handsets, because most people are also employees and have a corporate identity, when you go to handsets, man, all bets are off because you've just like quintupled or sextupled the attack surface area.
Yeah, this actually goes back to that cow story because USAHERD used keys, and in theory, keys are great, keys work, but they bypass their own key security. They started hard coding it, and at that point, why bother?
Yeah, I don't think keys are great. I think that keys are one of many things that you should use. I think password, TOPT, multi-factor, and biometrics, and IP address, and geolocation. I think it's got to be all of the above. And I will say, if you're relying on a passwordless solution, that's going to be great until someone has a warrant and they grab your phone from you and they have access to everything. At least with a password, it's in my brain, and in theory, I don't have to tell it to you.
Or you set up a system where that if there's any hint, you run a script and it deletes all your keys everywhere across the servers.
The point is, non-recovery is sometimes a feature and not a bug.
Right. Yeah.
That's right.
The great thing about a password is it's a secret that only I know, right? The bad thing about biometrics is I can unlock your phone with Face ID just by holding it up to your face. I can use your thumbprint against your will. right? And so if you're relying on a passwordless solution, you may be in a situation where someone wants access and you're unable to stop them physically. And if it's not something that you have to tell them, right? The safest place to store it is inside of your brain. If you can't do that, then you're kind of
Well,
fucked.
I get that, like, this is trite by 2022, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, but really kind of going from a password to a key, you're trading availability possibly for integrity, you know, as the weak letter there. Because as you said, if you build it on a system where those keys will never get exposed, like, yes, they will.
And an episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches. If you like what you saw today,
Get it there.
hello. Welcome to our video cast from not Russia or China, because we're banned there. If you have a bourbon or a breach you'd like us to cover,